Well, you guys are going to regret this. Instead of talking about the story as a whole, since I'm going to go into most of it anyway, I want to start with our main cast, because if there's anything that shines about this series, it's the characters. Major spoilers ahead for all 6 books of Miss Peregrine's Home of Peculiar Children, because let's be honest, I've talked to more people than I could count about this story, and only around 3 of them have actually started the books. But without further ado, who better to start off this video series than our titular character herself? Miss Peregrine as a character has to be one of my favorite parts of this specific found family story. Most focus on the friends you make becoming your family, but Miss Peregrine very quickly becomes more of a parent to Jacob than his actual parents are, which should say something as someone who also has parental issues. She can be strict, as expected from a motherly figure in the 1940s, but overall she's a very gentle and compassionate woman, always seeming to know just a bit more than you expect her to, and using this intelligence to protect both her wards and peculiardom as a whole. At the very end of the series, she even becomes the co-leader of the Council of Imbrants, and I couldn't be prouder of her for it. It's a very fitting role for her. In the story itself, she serves as the mentor figure for Jacob, introducing him to peculiardom and helping him navigate his peculiarity and his past regarding his grandfather. She helps him learn how to use his powers, never once perpetuating the unfortunately common theme of Jacob's life that somehow he has to live up to Abe's legacy. When Jacob asks if Abe was like the Peculiars, her only response is, "He was like you, Jacob," which makes her, to my immediate knowledge, the only character to compare Abe to Jacob instead of the other way around. Despite how new he is, she still loves him as one of her own and as his own individual. She stays this way in every book she's in but one, and that's one of the problems I have with A Map of Days as a whole. She becomes an antagonist and, in my opinion, is pulled really far out of character. Granted, she hadn't slept in multiple days and was also literally drugged by 5 of her children so they could run away from home without telling her, but how she treats Jacob after he leaves feels off to me. She kind of others him, which is like, dude, he's one of yours now too. Just because he's new and he pissed you off doesn't mean he's suddenly not one of your wards. We established this back in book 1. I had a friend explain it to me as, yeah, he's one of her wards, but it's like when a bird has a baby that's harming the others, they shove him out of the nest, which makes sense, especially with her being literally able to turn into a bird, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. The rest of the series, she isn't like this. She's a very good mother to everyone normally. A Map of Days may be my favorite of the series, but to say it's without issues would be a complete and total falsehood. Side note, I think it's really funny that the whole point of Hollow City is to figure out how to make her human again when she's not even in the book at all. She flat out doesn't appear in it. Thanks, Call. Speaking of, her relationship with Call and Bentham as both the villains of the story and her brothers is genuinely really interesting. I don't see many stories where the bad guys are one of the main characters' blood. Imagine both your evil brothers die and then you find out one of them has a resurrection grocery list with your heart on it. Yikes. Granted, it was a misunderstanding, but honestly would have made sense either way if the heart of the Mother of Storms being mistranslated to Mother of Birds was both genuine and supposed to be Miss Peregrine. Personally, I read that and assumed Miss Avocet, but I can absolutely see Colin Bentham being that caught up about Miss Peregrine not joining them. They're both bitter enough. I don't like Bentham. I'm sorry, I just don't. Call makes sense, but Bentham, I trusted him, he hurt me. Which I assume is a tiny fraction of how Miss Peregrine felt to learn her own brothers were trying to become gods. I have 2 brothers. If they decided for whatever reason to become cannibalistic monsters in order to spite me personally, I'd be pretty hurt by it too. In my incredibly biased opinion, I'm proud of her for being able to sever those ties before she got too hurt by them. It may seem heartless, but in her own words, sometimes no one can hurt you worse than your own family. Comparing her to her movie counterpart, she's a little less strict in the film, along with the much more obvious observation of being probably 40 years younger. She's supposed to be in her 80s, not look like my mom. That being said though, Eva Green did fantastic as her, and I genuinely can't imagine anyone else playing her, just a much older Eva Green. Miss Peregrine is one of the few characters they actually got decent in the movie in my opinion, but she absolutely does not have the same character she does in the books. Book Miss Peregrine would not have tolerated having to kill the cops twice in 1 week because of Raid the Village. She definitely has patience, she lives with Emma and Enoch for crying out loud, but that absolutely would not fly in that house and all those kids know it. Then again, it took until A Map of Days for murder to be added to the mustn't ever list, a list I desperately need to know the rest of the contents of, so who knows? Maybe she allows Raid the Village because the Cairn Home Police, or whoever enforces the laws on that island, has been memory wiped so many times they barely have a coherent brain anymore. I'd believe it, given how we treat normals sometimes, but my gripes with the Imbrant Council and their rules require a whole different video on their own. All this to say, Miss Alma Peregrine is only the first of many incredibly complex and interesting characters in this story, and I'm really excited to talk about more of them and work on more of this drawing. Painting? Drawing? It's paint markers. I don't know. If I can keep a schedule, and don't hold me to this, I only promise to try, by next week I'll be back with only the main character of this entire thing. He's not that important or anything. See ya!